Thank you so much for being here. Welcome to our panel discussion on the impact of choice. As the Nash Reads Committee, every year when we look at books and when we think about activities that we're going to plan, one of our goals is to stimulate discussion. One of our goals is to think about what can we talk about, what topics can we introduce. And if you've read the Other Wes Moore, which you may have, you may not have, you may be here simply because you want extra credit, and that's fine too. But when you read the Other Wes Moore, there are a lot of topics we could talk about. We can talk about resources for single mothers. We can talk about education for adults as well as kids. You can talk about communities, neighborhoods that kids live in, guns, drugs, the availability of those, teen pregnancy, economic situations in which people live. There's a lot we can talk about. But at the end of the day, both Wes Moores made choices in their lives that impacted one to become a Rhodes Scholar and one to end up in prison for the rest of his life. And so we decided for our first panel to talk about the impact of choice. And we are really excited to have several guests with us today to talk about their experience with that, with choice. Ms. Keisha Spivey is a youth pastor with Church on the Rise, and she's going to talk about, she's the author of a forthcoming book, The Pastor and the Prisoner, and it's a similar story to the Other Wes Moore. So she's going to talk about the impact of choice in her life and her family's life and those different paths that they resulted in. Tom Bayshore is Chief of Police for Nashville, North Carolina, and he's the founder of the HOPE initiative that provides choice for people who are struggling with drug addiction. And so he's going to explain that to us, tell us about what that offers. And we are especially grateful to have Joe with us today, who has been a participant in the HOPE program. And Joe's also going to share with us some life choices that he has had. So our goal is for each to maybe talk about 15 minutes and then have questions and answers at the end. And so if you could hold your questions for the end, we certainly will allow time for that, and we will rove with the microphone so you can be heard. And certainly if you are viewing us, feel free to type comments and questions, and they will be read as well. And so, Ms. Spivey, I'll turn it over to you.
Well, awesome. Well, thank you for the opportunity to be here. I am in the process of having my book published, and it is called A Pastor and a Prisoner, and it's Destiny-Defining Decisions. And what happens is you don't quite realize how one decision impacts the next decision, and you also don't realize that the biggest decision that you're going to make ever in your life is the next decision that you're going to make. You can't go back and undo things, but you can start fresh. For me, I grew up in this area, and I did not grow up in, I guess, what you would say the most amazing, awesome, happy family. My parents loved me. However, they didn't quite know how to provide the things that we all needed because they were both struggling with some of their own issues. And so it was me, I have a brother and a sister, and we all were in the same house, raised by the same parents up until we finished high school. However, due to some decisions that I made, and this is not to be prideful for myself, because my brother, I believe, is way smarter than I am. My sister will outwork me any day. However, we made different decisions that impacted our lives. Out of 3 children, same mom, same dad, I'm the only one who has a college education. I'm the only one who has a driver's license. I'm the only one who doesn't have a criminal record. And it doesn't mean I'm any better than them. It just meant I made some different decisions. And I decided early on that I wasn't going to be a product of my environment, that I was going to control my destiny, and I was going to make decisions that allowed me to have different for myself and to raise my children differently than that. I am a pastor, so y'all know I got to go a little pastory on you. That's just what I do. My brother, whom I love, an amazing young man, he built his life and he made decisions regarding possessions and things and stuff. He got into selling drugs early because he liked fancy stuff. He liked expensive stuff, and he built the decisions that shaped his life were kind of centered around that. My sister, whom I love, she's crazy as a bed bug, but I still love her. She made all her decisions. She fell in love with a young man in middle school, and she built her whole life around him. And so she made decisions, and she lost herself, her identity, and all that in him. And it spiraled her down a pathway that literally led her to prison. And my choices led me to a pulpit, and my brother's choices led him to prison. And I wish I could sit here and say that, I was way smarter, way sharper, way whatever. I wasn't. I wish I could sit and say it was different DNA, because according to our birth certificates, we got the same mom and daddy. If I wasn't there, I don't know, but that's what the records say. However, what our lives are, I'm the only one who's happily married. All my children by the same man. I'm the only one who not on a system. or dependent upon the government in any capacity. And again, that doesn't mean I'm any better than they are. They're great people, great hearts to do anything for you. However, they made decisions that they didn't quite realize what the consequences of those decisions would be. And so now they're, you know, pushing a few years older than you guys, and they're living in the fruit of those consequences. So you know what, as I heard a little bit about the Other Wes Moore, I haven't read the story, but I've lived it. I've lived it. And what I would like to say to all of you here is, you know what? Every day you're gifted with the opportunity to decide what you're going to do with your day. You know, every one of you are gifted with 24 hours in a day. It's given to you. And you have to decide moment by moment what you're going to do with it, how it's going to impact your life. And then you have to realize that the decisions that you make today, you will live in a year from now. The decisions you make a year from now, you will live in 5 years from now. The type of car you'll have, the home you'll live in, the way you raise your family, that will be shaped by the decisions that you're making today. So often, I talk to young people on a regular basis, I'll do that tomorrow, I'll procrastinate, I got time, not recognizing that the decisions that you make today will produce your tomorrow. You'll live in the fruit of that, and you never get to escape that. You get the benefits of it, or you get the consequences of it. I think about the decisions that my sister started making when she was in the 7th grade. She's still living in the fruit of that. You know, she was able to buy time, and she was able to avoid the system. She was able to run for the law. Y'all had a warrant out for her for 10 years. I'm just saying. She's smart. She's smart. She knew how to navigate the system. She would work, and I mean, she was a genius. However, the decisions that she made were always cycling around to put her back into the same thought pattern that would eventually lead to the results. What ended up happening through me sitting down with her, having a strong conversation about her life being different 5 years from now, because she was still living in that vicious cycle. She was still running from the law. She was still avoiding all those things. I convinced her to make the decision to turn herself in. Now that decision and I took her to the police department. I took custody of her children. I brought them into my home. So her making that defining decision impacted my family and my life and my home. However, I understood that if she did not get off the cycle, if she didn't get off that roller coaster, then her children would do what? Repeat the same decision cycle. So I made different decisions. I made some sacrificial decisions, and I brought her children into my home, and I let her serve her sentence. Why? Because something that she did 15 years ago, a decision she had made when 15 years ago, was still haunting her. And the only way she could get over it was to make a good decision to right that wrong. So I know you guys are sitting here saying, okay, great, I want extra credit. I don't really care about any of this stuff. You know, 2 years from now, 3 years from now, when you are not where you want to be, and your grades don't look like they want to look, and you want to blame the professor. I'm a college professor as well, because it's always our fault that y'all aren't getting what you need. I don't think so. You know, when you want to blame your parents because they didn't do right by you and your sister was the favorite, start practicing some adulting. Realize that you own your decisions, regardless of your upbringing, regardless of what you had or didn't have, regardless of your last name, what side of the tracks you stay on, regardless of the color of your skin, regardless of the situation that you had so far. You cannot undo any of that. A lot of times you sit in a place and you don't get to control the decisions that are made for you. You know, for me as a child, I didn't get to control a lot of that, but I had to control how I responded to that. So I got my power back in making a decision to not be defined by that. So I challenge you, take an inventory of where you are in your life right now. Look at some of the decisions that you're making. Which ones are pushing you toward purpose and destiny, and which ones are keeping you held a prisoner to your past? Which ones allow you to own and take responsibility for your life, or which ones keep you stuck in quicksand? Because everybody wants to be an adult until it's time to be an adult. So that's my challenge to you. Read the book. I know some of you are like, I don't want to read. Get over it. Read. You want to learn, you want to grow. I'm a lifelong learner. I'm committed. I read every day. I've written a few books, but I'm reading books every day because that's the only way that I can shape where I'll be 2 years from now and 5 years from now. You want to hide something from somebody? Hide it in a book. Only those who are willing to seek out truth and learn how to make wiser, more secure, more intentional decisions are the ones who will be satisfied with where they end up. So make good decisions.
Good afternoon. So I get to see the consequences of individuals' choices on a daily basis, not just from being a police officer, but running the program that we run out of the Nashville Police Department now. So I don't know how many of you have heard of the HOPE Initiative, but it is based on an angel program that started up in New England back in the summer of 2015. And then New England at the time was experiencing a lot of overdose deaths from heroin. And when we started looking at the program down here, we knew that it was just going to be a matter of time before it got to North Carolina the same way it was up in New England at that time back in 2015. And now you can see, if you turn on the news or read the newspaper, you are going to see that it is a problem all over the United States. And so it is definitely here in North Carolina. So in a nutshell, what the HOPE Initiative does is it allows individuals that have a substance use disorder to come to the Nashville Police Department, and if they have any drugs or paraphernalia on them at the time, they can turn that over to us, and we do not charge them with a crime. And so, yes, I've had people say, well, Chief, what if somebody walked in the door and asked for help and they gave you a kilo of heroin? Would you arrest them? And the answer to that is no. The promise that we made was that we would not arrest people for that. Now, there's not much I can do from the choices, the bad choices, I should say, that they've made previous to that if they have pending charges. But the district attorney is fully on board with the program in order to help individuals. So they come to us, and what we do is to get them into treatment and recovery. And so that looks different for different people. There's not just one way or one pathway. And so typically what happens is someone will walk in the police department, and we do a short little intake with them. And then from there, we get them to the emergency room, checked in, and then into detox, if that's what they need, or an outpatient program or a residential treatment program. And so many individuals have used different pathways through the HOPE Initiative to get that process started. We were the first police department in the state of North Carolina to do this type of program, and there are other police departments now that are starting to do similar programs, because I think that they too have recognized that the traditional communication and relationship that we have had with individuals who have substance use disorder in the past has been, we interact, you broke a law, we put you in handcuffs, we carry you to jail, and then hopefully somebody else took care of the problem. And then soon thereafter, you're back out in the community, breaking more laws to sustain your habit, again, interact, arrest, go to jail. And so it's a perpetual cycle that doesn't end. Again, based on a lot of bad choices. So what we do is hopefully try to break that cycle, and we have been very successful in doing that. We've not always been successful, but we've been very successful in doing that. So we were the first one in the state to do it, and we started in February of 2016 through some partnerships that we developed with the district attorney's office, Robert Evans, the local sheriff, Keith Stone, the hospital, Coastal Plain Detox Facility, and many treatment facilities around the state of North Carolina. And so in the first 11 months that we ran the program, we had 100 people come through the police department. Now that seems a little counterintuitive in that why would somebody who their traditional interaction with law enforcement has been handcuffs, go to jail? And so I think that a lot of it has to do with a community policing philosophy and the trust that we have built with the community that we police in general. And so once the first few started to come through the program, word kind of spread that, you know, it wasn't a trick. You know, we weren't offering like Super Bowl tickets if you come down and then we serve you with a warrant. And so first 11 months, we were at 100 people. In June of this year, we were at 15 months, we were at 150 people. And in June of this year, I was saying that probably by December, we would be at 200. And 2 months later, in August, we hit 200. As we stand today, not even at the end of October now, we have had 257 people come through that program. And so it's interesting, at least from my perspective, because I've probably sat down with almost every one of them that have come through the program initially. And just to kind of give you some idea, the lobby for the Nashville Police Department, Nashville's pretty small, if anybody's familiar with Nashville, it's 5,400 people that live there. Our lobby is open Monday through Friday, 8 to 5. And so what happens if you show up on Sunday afternoon at 2 o'clock or at 6:30 on a Tuesday night? Do we tell them to come back at 8 o'clock the next morning? What would you suppose they would do if we told them that? Nobody would show back up at 8 o'clock the next morning, I guarantee that. So when they're ready, we're ready. So we come out whenever they're ready. And it's been an interesting dynamic. It's interesting to watch the transformation of individuals when they go through the program from making bad decisions, making bad choices in their life, and then turning that around and starting to make good decisions, and then get to see that progression of those good choices and what they can lead to. It's amazing to watch that. And the one thing about substance use disorder that I think many of you in this room would probably recognize is it's not an individual disease. It is a disease, but it's not an individual disease. It's a family disease because it affects more than that one person who has a substance use disorder. There are many parents out there that are raising their own grandchildren because the mothers and fathers are addicted to an opiate. And many times that starts with a prescription drug. So you have to be very careful about that. So that's the program we're at, that we run in Nashville. And so I guess that is a good segue to Charlie, because Charlie was a participant in the program. And I met Charlie 11 months ago. I didn't even realize it was 11 months ago until we were talking this afternoon. I was like, how long has it been? I was thinking it was 5 or 6, but it's been 11 months. And so Charlie is one of those individuals who I'm sure he'll tell you that made some bad decisions in his life and is now making some good decisions, and turning his life around. So, and how that affects him and his family. So, Charlie?
Well, I made bad choices starting when I was 13 years old, smoking weed, marijuana, you name it. Well, then I moved to Rocky Mount. 14, I got into doing cocaine, and it went from there to 11 months ago. But shooting cocaine, cheating on my wife, stealing, you name it, I done it. And 11 months ago, I just made a choice in my mind. I was all the way in West Virginia. I called my wife, 5 hours away, and I told her, I said, come get me, I need some help. But she's been talking to another woman that she knows, and she came got me. I lied, cheated on her, stealing, you name it. Why would somebody come get you 5 hours away that you left 2 kids behind? That woman over there, she loved me to death. I got to give it to her because she put up with my junk. We've been together 19 years, been married 9. She's been there through thick and thin, and I told her to come get me. She come got me with a best friend of mine. And they seen track marks all in my arm. I said, I can't go get help until I see my 2 girls. I went and seen them, explained to a 13-year-old. How do you explain it to a 13-year-old? Hard. And then I went to see the chief, Nashville Police Department. And I told him I need to go get some help. He took me to Nash General Hospital. They set me in this room. I ain't never seen a room like this. I've been to jail, padded room. That's not me. And then I went to Coastal Plain. Stayed in there 4 days. Chief said, I see you. 4 days is a long time. Dope sick. Oh, man. People just don't even realize what a drug addict goes through. But I have been clean 11 months. Hard. 11 months. Hard. Withdrawals? Oh, man. You can ask my wife. It's crazy. You wake up don't even want to be here on earth, because you got to get that pill. Cravings. And I still have bad days. But I think about my kids and my wife. I got to fight it. I told the chief in detox, I'm going home. I can beat this. You got to have it in your mind. And you got to have loved ones that support you. And I can honestly say, this man right here probably saved my life and my wife. 11 months. I'm still going on. Opiates, marijuana, cocaine, I can honestly say I'm drug free. But it's out there. It's tempted. Peer pressure, oh my God, it's hard. And it's still going to be hard for me from now until the day I die. I got friends that does it. I had to turn down jobs because I know people that does it. And I don't want to put myself in that predicament anymore. But when I got out of detox, I went home. We were going down the road, Kingston Avenue. That's where it all started at for me. I told my wife, I said, you got to turn this car around right now. She said, why? I can't go down this road. Peer pressure. It's a snap of a finger. She turned around. She said, let me ask you a question. She said, why did you make me turn around? I said, that's where it all started. Friends, I lost a lot of friends because all of them into the drugs, alcohol. But I went from shooting 16 times a day, opiates. My first shot on opiates was a morphine and Dilaudid. Killed me. 4.5 minutes. They brought me back. The girl I was with, her family brought me back. And guess what I said when they got me to? Give me another shot. And that's where I just, 16 times a day, different kind of pain pills, you name it. But it's all started because I made bad decisions. And I got to face that. And I don't want to see nobody on drugs anymore. My 2 kids is my life. And they done seen me smoking weed, going out of the house at night, 5, 6 hours, come back, messed up. You don't want to show your kids that. And 11 months ago, I just made a choice to get clean, and now I'm here 336 days today. No, as of yesterday. Because you can't count the day because the day's not over. That's what they always tell me. I go to NA meetings. Phil sent me up with this Englewood Baptist Church, a guy named Phil.
Yeah, he's awesome.
And let me tell you.
New friend.
He's a best friend of mine. I've been there. I go every Tuesdays and Thursdays. I call this man right here at least twice a month. And you got to want it before you got to get help. And that's what I done. I called my wife, told her to come get me. And she came. And that's basically it. You got to keep moving. I can't stop and try to think about the past. Because if you go towards the past, you're going to go back to it. Trust me, I know. I did it over and over since I was 13. I'm 35 now. And it's hard. I wouldn't want nobody to do what I done. But that's my story, and I just don't want y'all to do the same I did. Make good choices in life. Go to school. Don't be like me, I quit in 12th grade. And what I got to show for in school? Nothing. Working construction. That ain't the life I wanted when I was a little kid. I wanted to be a fireman or a police officer when I was growing up. And then I got in trouble with the law. That was my worst enemies. But now,
Still want to be a fireman?
No, I did that. I did volunteer fireman years ago. So I done my dream, what I want to do, go through a burning house. But I never will be a cop. As long as I got this man right here, he's my deputy, my sheriff. So, but you just got to make right choices in life. And all y'all young in here, you got to have a dream, and you got to stick with your dream. I didn't ever stick with mine, but because I made bad choices, and I can own up to it. I can honestly say I did bad choices in life, but now I'm trying to correct that, and it's hard. Every day it's hard, but I got it set in my head, and I told the chief that 4 days after I got out of detox, I can beat this by myself. And so far, as long as I got my wife and my kids, I'm set. Because my 6-year-old loves her daddy to death, and that's my pride and joy, and that's the only reason I got clean for my wife and kids. And that's it. That's all I got to say.
Thank you to all of you, and I apologize for inventing a new name for you, Charlie. Anybody have any questions? Somebody's bound to have a question.
It's just 100 million people watching.
It's Charlie, right? Your
Yeah.
name Charlie? My name's Sharonda. I just got a quick question for you because I was raised by my mom. She was a single parent. And when I was growing up, she was out there in the world, addicted to drugs. I don't know. But my mom wasn't one that stuck to one kind. It was whatever she could afford or whatever she could get her hands on. But when she did start to clean up and go to rehab and stuff, they told her to be aware of her triggers. Like you said, the street was a trigger for you. But have you discovered things that you didn't know was a trigger to you? Like that put you uneasy, you realize, I didn't even know that bothered me until now, you know, that type of thing, or made you replay something in your head or anything like that?
No.
No? Well, that's good then.
I got it set in my head, not letting nothing trigger me off. But I have bad days, I mean, and the chief told me, and the guy I go to the meetings with, he said, you're going to have them at least for a year and a half. You might still be craving. It depends what you've done, how much damage you've done to your body. And I just don't let nothing trigger me. Because I had a job. I was working with these two other guys, two brothers. They snort cocaine 24/7. They were paying me $125 to $150 a day. That's good money in construction. And I had to stop. Because when I seen them snort a line, I had to say, I'm going home. My wife came and got me from one job all the way in Hobgood, Scotland Neck. Just because I seen them do it, and I said, you got to come get me. It's just, I can't be around it. But I got it set in my head. Most people don't got it set. You got to want help to get help. And that's what I go through in life now.
Another question.
I have a question for you, Charlie. I know you said you talked to a pastor. Did you talk to a pastor? Who was it? It's somebody at a church.
Yeah, Inglewood.
I was wondering if you've experienced any kind of baptism or spiritual change since then.
I used to go to church when I was small. And with my first wife, I went to a Pentecostal. So I believe in speaking in tongues. I done talked to the Lord years ago, but now I just the guy at the Inglewood Church, Phil, he's pushing me to join the church, because the 12 steps program where I go through is basically like a church type 12 steps. And my kids go to church, but I feel like I'm not ready yet to go that next step. And Phil told me that you will want it. You'll know when your time's right. And I'm just waiting for that moment.
Do you feel like it helps that you are held accountable by people? Like, I have a brother, and he's struggling with the same thing, and he's recently been out of a rehabilitation called Converting Hearts. But he has fallen back into the same thing, and it's hard for me to hold him accountable. He doesn't have anyone else to hold him accountable. Does it help knowing that you have him and others that do indeed hold you accountable for your actions?
Yeah, I made a promise, and I got to keep my promise. I don't like breaking promises, because they helped me through what I was going through. And
If I could comment just on that a little bit, that the part of the problem right now in society is there's such a stigma attached to substance use disorder that a lot of people are hiding in the shadows, and because of that, right now in our communities there's not a lot of support. So I can send trust me, Charlie's an exception to a lot of rules. Yes. But I can send someone to a treatment program, and I know the one you're talking about. It's a very good program. But what happens when they get out of that and come back to the community that they left from, and so there's no support for them? And so it does matter. It does help a lot. And so there is one of the things, there is support out there, but it's not a lot of it. There's a work to find it. So there's NA groups, there's NARNON for family members. The NA is the equivalent for AA 12-step program, what Charlie's doing. Wilson just started a recovery community center. Rocky Mount and Nash County is working on trying to do that same thing. And so there is support, but it's very minimal. And so we have to have more of that. And the only way to get more of that is to help reduce that stigma, because if everybody has kind of a bad taste in their mouth or a negative thought process about recovery, there's not going to be any support for it. So
I also want to add on that, because I know what it's like to be the family member of someone who's in active addiction. And as we're talking about decisions, there's a part that you have to make regarding your own decision-making process, because you can't decide for someone else. You cannot force someone to want help. You know, I guarantee you Charlie's wife is sitting here, but there was a season he went through where he didn't want help. And she tried, and I'm sure she begged, and she tried to help him and try to threaten him and everything under the sun, but there was not anything she could do until he made the decision that this is what I want. And probably one of the hardest things that I can bet she could tell you is that she had to make the decision to let him go until he came to that place. So when you are the person and you're surrounded by alcoholics, when you're surrounded by addicts, when you have people in your life that you love, even for my sister, whom I loved and I tried to help and I did everything. I built her out. I did all these things that I kept her out of jail. I mean, I did all of that. But it wasn't until she had to come to herself. And I had to literally be tough in my decision making so that I was an enabler. And I didn't allow her problem to be my problem. And I didn't carry that burden, which meant I had to decide how to put parameters around my life so that I could not only protect me and my family and my children, but my mind and my health. Because the challenge with being around people who are in addiction is it becomes, as he said, it's the family problem. It is not just the person who's choosing to do the drugs, the money, or the people that are stealing, or the outbursts. You get all of that. And so I just want to encourage you. You know, I'm a pastor, so I got to tell you, you be prayerful and you be mindful, because and if you can see it happen for one, that's enough to let me know it can happen for someone else. You stay in faith, you stay to a position of encouraging and support, but do not let his problem, don't let his addiction become yours.
Anybody else?
Miss Spivey, in reading The Other Wes Moore, Wes Moore spends a lot of the book trying to figure out what made the difference in his life and the life of the other Wes Moore. And in class, we've talked about situations like yours where it's the same family and things take such a different turn. Have you reflected on your own life and tried to find what that turning point was that made the difference for you as opposed to your siblings?
I think for me, I did. And even in writing the book, it was hard to write because I had to, you know, investigate and get deep and stuff. And I was trying not to do all that. But I think for me, what I chose, I made a decision early on that I wanted something different. Not only did I want something different, I made the decision to discover what that difference would look like and the things I would need to do to have different. You know, I loved my parents. However, I didn't want their marriage. I did not want their weaknesses. I think about this, my mom, who's gone to be with the Lord. I looked at her and I remember for years how I loved her, but I didn't like her. You know, I know y'all may say that's ugly to say, but I loved her, but I didn't like her. I loved my dad, but I did not like him. And so I think early on, I figured out the things I could glean from them. Like my dad, his work ethic, that was my thing. So I celebrated that, but I also learned about the things about him that I didn't like. And I went on a personal journey to how to be the opposite. And I worked on me. I'm just telling you guys, I worked hard on me. I wish I could sit here and say that, you know, I just decided it's going to be this. No, I made decisions in school. I was going to have good grades because I learned early. Nobody in my family had gone to college. Education had to be the start. I didn't want to be broke. I didn't want to fight over money. I realized my parents always, most of the time they started fighting, it was fighting over money. Okay, solve the money problem. How do I solve the money problem? I get an education. How do I get an education? I get good grades. I study. I started thinking back on the little things. Even as a little girl, when I think back to being 10 and 11 years old, I was consciously aware of what I was doing and making decisions to position myself differently. So when me and my brother and my sister, we get together and we have this running joke because somebody met my sister that have known my sister all her life, and she knew me too, but never knew we were sisters. And it was so funny, we were standing in the store, and my sister introduced her, and she said, "That's your real sister? Like, whole sister?" And my sister's like, "Yes, like, same mama, like, same." We were like, "Yeah." She's like, "There's no way. No way." Because she seen my sister's lifestyle, and she knew a little bit about me. And the reality is, which was I didn't discover till I was writing this book, is my sister and I have way more in common than we have that's different. We have the same gifts, same talent, same abilities. We have the same. However, I chose to use mine differently, and it took us on two different paths. I did want to say something. I think when he was speaking earlier about some of the decisions that he made. You're sitting in this room and you're like, "Oh my gosh, I wish I could wish I could if I had a shoulda over." You know, nobody in this room, nobody can unscramble eggs. Nobody. So what you've done yesterday, what you've done up to today, you can't undo it. But my philosophy is, you know what, sitting here listening to this story and reading this book, I believe everybody in this room has the power to get a new pan and scramble up some new ones. And my philosophy is when you're making better decisions, why just have eggs? Can I get some cheese? Can I get a little onions and peppers, jalapenos? Let's add to it. So make decisions that push you toward the things that you want. You know, when I think about my brother and my sister, I think about how much of their life, they have so many regrets. So many regrets. And their natural tendencies every day, they're trying to make up for what they didn't do. And I've just challenged them, you can't undo the things with the children. You can't undo this. You can't undo that. What can you do today? And how can you start fresh?
Sorry, another question?
And talking about the HOPE program y'all have going out at Nash, is there any kind of thing, like you were talking about with the negative stigma that's associated with recovery, to help these recoverers get into job situations to where they have something more to rely on to keep them straighter, just for having that job stability, give them something to do with their time instead of just sitting at home and contemplating?
So you're talking about after they go through a treatment program?
After they go through the facility and get out.
Yes. So there's a lot of resources in and around the community. One is called Vocational Rehab, or VOCAB, and that's down in Rocky Mount. And so they kind of specialize in individuals that have, in fact, one of the prerequisites is that you have to have been convicted of a felony. And so those individuals that have felony convictions on their record sometimes find it very difficult to find work. But there are employers out there willing to work with individuals that have that. And so different drugs bring different types of crimes with them. So if you have a quarter pound of marijuana on you, then, you know, more than likely that's going to end up being a misdemeanor. If you have residue of heroin on a spoon or a bag or in your vehicle, that's a felony automatically. Any amount of possession of a heroin is a felony. So depending on the drug. But yes, there are a lot of resources out there. It's just, a lot of times it's just a matter of finding them. What I've seen many times is, and you may have seen these commercials more and more now, you know, call 1-800-ADDICTION and we'll help you. And so somebody that has an addiction and maybe they're ready for help and they haven't heard about the HOPE Initiative or other programs that are going on. So they pick up the phone and they call 1-800-I'm-addicted. And so they say, yes, we'll help you, but it's going to be $12,000. And the person has no money, they have no insurance, and they hang up the phone thinking, well, I gave it a shot, and so I'm doomed to be addicted to drugs the rest of my life. That's not true. And so there are other things that can occur to help them. So there is a lot of support out there. It's just a matter of finding it sometimes.
Another question?
I can imagine when someone walks into your office for the HOPE Initiative, that's a very tenuous relationship you have right that second. What do you say to them when they first come in order to not just set them at ease, but to build up those initial, like, to keep them coming back and actually, like, you know, stay? Like, how do you build that initial relationship with people that come in the door?
There's no trick. It really is about being genuine and being honest and not being judgmental. And for police, sometimes that's a little hard, you know, because we tend to look at everybody as a criminal. Like, what did you do that I just haven't caught you doing yet? But really, it is about being non-judgmental and just seeing a human being there that needs help and doing whatever it is. And I tell them, if you will give me 100%, if you'll do your part, I will do 150%. I'll do whatever it takes. If it's coming out in the middle of the night, if it's taking phone calls, whatever it is, I will help you. And so I think that initial kind of just rapport building that occurs kind of is what does it. Yeah, there's no trick, though. I wish there was sometimes.
I was going to say, it'd be nice if there was.
Yeah.
Checklist.
Hit a button.
Yeah, check. Yes, exactly.
Somebody else? Because the reality, Chief, of course, is we've tried to incarcerate our way out of the drug problem for years, and that hasn't worked and isn't going to work, and we have prisons full of people
I don't think it's working.
that's not worked. So, you know, we have to try, and treatment is certainly a better strategy.
Mr. Bayshore, you said that you make those initial referrals when folks come in. What is your role after they have gone to the hospital or to the treatment facility? Is it a matter of you just you make yourself a point of contact and you give them your number, or do they check back in with you? What's your role after that?
Well, there's no requirement that they check back in, but we try to stay in contact with them as much as possible. And so when they go through the process, we were very fortunate in the county of Nash. Early on in the program, 4 months into it, Nash County commissioners funded a social worker position at the detox facility, Coastal Plain Hospital. And so that individual kind of takes, I get them to the hospital and get them started. They end up over at the detox facility, and that's where she takes over. And so then we work hand in hand in trying to place them to whatever pathway they think they're going to be successful at. We don't force them into, we don't say you got to go to long term or we're not going to help you. If that was the case, Charlie probably wouldn't be sitting here right now, because Charlie didn't take that path. I try to stay in the beginning. I'll be honest. In the beginning, it was pretty easy. When I had 17, 20, 25 people, 257. That's a little bit. I'm getting up there in age. So, but I still stay in contact with many of the individuals that come through. They all have my cell phone number. When I retire, you won't be able to call me probably, but
I don't know where you stay at.
Yeah. So, we try to do follow up with everybody that comes through the program and follow them and make sure that they're doing well. So, I have jokingly said, and it's I shouldn't say it that way because it's a fact that once you come into the Hope Initiative, it's a lifetime membership. We've had individuals that have come through, gone to treatment, come back into the same environment they left from and had problems, like the young lady indicated, and have come back through the program. And we don't judge them. We don't say, we gave you a shot and you blew it. And what I guess I find interesting is that some of those individuals will call me and say, Chief, I'm really sorry. I disappointed you. I welcome them back with open arms and try to get them back into the path that they need to be on.
Chief, have you seen cynicism from your peers in law enforcement, or have you felt support? Because
No.
as you said earlier, typically law enforcement is arrest and get off the street and arrest and get off the street.
I think now what I'm starting to see, because I've been invited a lot of places around the state of North Carolina for other police departments to start similar programs. I guess initially, I think even from my perspective, because I worked narcotics for 8 years in Rocky Mount, that's not our job. That's a social work job. That's a nurse's job. That's somebody else's job. And my job is to arrest you. That's my job security. You go out and break the law, I get arrested you, put you in jail. You keep doing it, I'm going to have a job forever. I think law enforcement, really the tide is turning now, that the majority of law enforcement is seeing that obviously we can't keep arresting people because that doesn't do a good job. It doesn't fix the problem. It's affecting many, 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 many more people now. And so something not necessarily radical, but different needs to be done. And so I think that you're going to see more across the board law enforcement agencies do this kind of stuff. Yeah. And I'll just say a couple other quick things that I forgot to mention earlier. So 2 things that are unique about our program. One is that there's no residency requirement. You don't have to be a resident of Nashville or Nash County. We've had people from all over the state come. And a week and a half ago, I had somebody drive up from Florida. They got in a car 10 hours and drove to Nashville, North Carolina to get in the HOPE program. So there's no residency requirement. The second part is that you don't have to have an addiction to an opiate. It doesn't have to be heroin or prescription medications such as Percocet or Percodan or hydrocodone or Oxycontin, none of that stuff. It can be any drug, alcohol, methamphetamine, marijuana, it doesn't matter. Whatever your drug of choice is, we use those same resources for those individuals as well, so to include alcohol. And the age, I know I can run on. I could talk about this forever.
Right.
Of those 257 that have come through, the average, so the range is, I've had them as young as 15, but most of them, those have only been a few, 18 to 64 years old was the oldest one. I had 64. The average age is 30 years old. But when we talk to all of them, when we ask them about when they started using, it's typical what Charlie said. 13, 11, 10, 12 years old, using marijuana, alcohol, and then it just progresses from there. You know, there's a lot of people that think, well, you know, marijuana is not a gateway drug. We can debate that all day long. But that really a lot of times alcohol and marijuana is where it starts, and then it just becomes, well, you know, I didn't die from that stuff, so let me go on, and then peer pressure kicks in, and your friends have got pills, and here, try one of these, and then it just progresses. Every person that I've talked to that has specifically a heroin addiction, they didn't see themselves having a heroin addiction. They swore up and down 6 months before they started to stick a needle in their arm that they would never have done that, and that's the natural progression. And none of them want to continue. It's not about, I like getting high anymore. That's not why they continue to use. That's not why they go out and break the law to continue to use heroin. It's because if they stop using the opiate, heroin, they get sick. It's called dope sickness. And that, for anybody that's never experienced that, and I haven't either, but it's been described to me a million times now, that's something you don't want to happen. You will do whatever it takes. Whatever it takes. If you would steal your grandmother's $3,000 heirloom ring to carry it down to the pawn shop for $60 so that you could buy more heroin, so that you can ingest that into your body to prevent from getting sick. And that's why they continue to do it. It's a brain disease. It's not because you were raised poorly. Clearly. It's not because you were raised poorly. It's not a moral failing at all. It is a brain disease. And once it affects you, it's tough to break that cycle. But there is hope.
Something that I told one of my students one time is, nobody wakes up one day or go to kindergarten class or first grade and says, you know, when they ask, what do you want to be when you grow up? No one says, I want to be a crackhead. No one says, I want to be a prostitute. Nobody says that. But, you know, as you guys are talking through this book, what happens is they made one decision to start the process. You know, I think about a lot of people that I deal with that are in addiction. They started smoking cigarettes. Then they started drinking beer. Then they went to alcohol. Then they smoked a joint. Everyone was a decision that led to the next decision that created a door or a vacuum that it took more of whatever, a stronger, a bigger, a higher, whatever it is, to fill that void. But what happens is, and this can be with anything, it can be with overeating, it could be with drugs, it could be with alcohol, it could be with depression, anxiety. You take away the addiction, put whatever the vice is there. And every one of them comes back when you go to the root system to the choices and the decisions, the coping mechanisms, the intentions, the motives, the support. All of it goes back because it's so, you know, I was talking to someone last week and I said, you know, when we sit and we talk about drugs and we talk about the, you know, the stigma that goes along with it, it's no different with anything. If you pull back the label and the title, the decisions of whatever it is, it goes back to owning those things and being mindful and cognizant of those things. You know, one thing I wanted to say earlier that I forgot, if you want to do a quick evaluation of your decision-making habits and the type of decisions that you're making, take a quick inventory of your 5 closest friends. Average that up, and you're right there in the middle. Average your 5 closest associates and put yourself in the middle. Is that association going to get you what you want? Is the decision to stay connected to those people going to benefit you or is it going to hurt you? Because what happens is you think you are affecting them, but actually they're infecting you. That first decision for a room full of young people, who you spending time with, who's influencing you, who's impacting your decision-making ability, and who are you giving that ownership to? Who has the real responsibility for your decisions? See, for me, it was me. For my sister, it was her boyfriend. For my brother, it was stuff. Pull back the layer. What's the intention? What's the motivation? Who has the power in your life? Because whoever has the power is making your decisions. Whatever has the power is making your decisions.
Very well said.
I just have a comment for the chief. I was in the emergency room several months ago. It was after midnight on a Friday night, and I looked across that lobby, and this makes me emotional, and you were there, and you had 2 people with you, and I instantly realized why you were there. And I just want to say thank you for what you're doing. It's just amazing.
Anybody else? Right.
I can probably speak so that you can hear me because I am a teacher. But I just wanted to say, in reference to the family, the support group is also affected. I've been through this myself, and I'll tell you, there's nothing that saved my life more than Al-Anon. I highly recommend it. I didn't realize I was sick. I went to Al-Anon because somebody said, you need some help. And I went in there and said, I need you to help me fix my loved one. And they said, well, you're going to have to go home then because we're just going to try to teach you how to fix yourself and how to deal with this. And the young lady that spoke about what can she do, and I know it's heartbreaking when you can't make other people do what you want them to do, but you just can't, and you don't realize how much of an enabler you are sometimes, and you don't realize what you need to do to be loving and supportive until you understand how to fix yourself and become the kind of loving support. It saved my relationship with my loved one, and it saved my life because I had just gotten to the point where I never considered doing anything to harm myself, but I wouldn't have minded if a bus ran over me at all. And I was sick. I did not realize that. So Al-Anon, I just sing the praises for that.
Anybody else?
Could you explain to us some of the resources that y'all have, just in case, like, if somebody wasn't to want to go into the HOPE program?
So, yes, there are a few have been mentioned already, like Narcotics Anonymous or NA groups. They meet every day in and around the Twin Counties. And they also do it online, so you can, if you for some reason you can't get to the meeting, they actually do an online thing now. So that's one. Narnon is another one, and she was talking about Al-Anon back there. And there's only one group that meets, and that's in Nashville at the Methodist Church on Wednesdays at 8 o'clock. That's for family members. And to learn what it is you're doing that enables your loved one to continue. Talking about setting boundaries and things like that. And then, so for the rest of it, there are a lot of resources as far as intensive outpatient programs. There's one in Rocky Mount. There's one in Wilson. There are Starting Point. Monarch is a walk-in crisis center on Tiffany Boulevard in Rocky Mount. And then residential treatment programs, there are none here locally. Probably the closest one to us geographically would be the one the young lady was talking about in Creedmoor, Converting Hearts. It's about 45 minutes away. We use them on a regular basis. There's a place called Loaves and Fishes in Beaufort, North Carolina, 28 beds. Miriam in Beaufort, North Carolina, Morehead City. Reviving Lives Ministry in New Bern. Recovery Ventures out in the western part of the state. So there's a lot of places around that do residential type treatment.
On your website, like, do you have a resource
Guide?
Mm-hmm.
It's something we're working on. It's one of those things where sometimes I don't have enough time to breathe. I have to remember to breathe. And so yes, but in my office I have a lot of pamphlets. A lot of people have dropped off pamphlets and things so I have all those resources there, but I haven't really kind of stuck them out there in the web yet. So.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. Any other questions? Well, let's give another round of applause to our panelists and thank them for being here with us. Thank you guys for coming. I hope it gave you a lot to think about as you've read the book or are reading the book, and just for personal life as well. Thank you for joining us today.